Welcome to Living the Smarter Science of Slim, where we provide a scientifically proven lifestyle for long-term health and fat loss by eating more and exercising less, but smarter.
Eat smarter, exercise smarter, live better. I am so ready for that.
Hey everyone, Jonathan Baylor back with another bonus Smarter Science of Slim podcast. Today, definitely going to be a good one. A wonderful, lighthearted, kind, and intelligent and strong man joining us today. He is the co-founder of Cressy Performance, located in Hudson, Massachusetts, right outside of Boston. He is a regular contributor to Testosterone Magazine. That's a pretty cool name for a magazine. Live Strong, Men's Health, Women's Health. Basically, if you know what you're talking about in the area of strength and wellness, you're talking to Tony Gentilcore, and that's who we're talking to today. Tony, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jonathan, what's going on? First of all, can I just say, I need to hire you as my new hype man. That was like the most baller introduction I've ever had. Like, I'm seriously, every time I do my speaking engagements, I'm just going to replay that before I start talking.
Well, you should cut up the podcast and just play
awesome.
that in the morning as an affirmation to yourself.
Yeah, add a laser show, we'll be all set.
Oh, and I forgot to mention, you are a certified strength and conditioning specialist, or CSCS for short.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This will be fun. It's great to be on.
Well, Tony, it's a pleasure to have you on, folks. If you want to follow along as we chat here, you can visit Tony's website at Tony Gentilcore, and that's GENTILCORE. So it's TonyGentilcore.com. And Tony, just right from the get-go, how did you get because you're working over at Cressy Performance, one of the premier places in the country, and this is a crowded industry, and there's a lot of people in this industry. So one, what spurred your interest to dedicate your life to this in the first place? And two, how have you been able to differentiate yourself? Because you certainly are.
Yeah, well, number one, like yourself and a lot of people in your audience, like fitness is basically a part of my life. I can't remember a time where I wasn't playing some kind of sport outside, whether it be baseball, basketball, football, wiffle ball, kickball, anything like that. My parents got me my first weight set when I was 13, and the rest is history as far as that. But as far as the fitness industry itself, like I played baseball all through high school. Was lucky enough to play 4 years in college. Had a couple of pro prospects, but unfortunately there isn't a huge market for right-handers that throw 85 miles an hour. So I ended up going back, finishing school and got my degree in health education, but also decided I got a concentration in health wellness promotion. So I made the good call of deciding not to go into academia and thought it'd be way cooler to spend my time in the gym. And I've been doing it since 2002, so a little over a decade now, which sounds surreal saying that. But as far as like what I feel differentiates myself is like, I've prided myself in surrounding myself around a lot of smart people. I also pride myself in continuing education. So I just didn't get my certification and was like, hey, let's start training people. Like I really made it a point of seeking out people who are smarter than myself, learning from lots of different people, whether it be on biomechanics, whether it be on anatomy, whether it be on performance-based stuff, whether it be nutrition. And luckily, Eric and I have been friends for a long, long time. Another friend of ours, Pete Dupuis, the three of us started Cressy Performance back in the summer of 2008, and it's been an awesome journey. We've grown from a 2,000 square foot facility to a little over 15,000 square feet now.
Jeez.
And we just passed out. I mean, we're known as baseball guys. Like we train a lot of baseball players. We had roughly 80 professional baseball players train with us last offseason, and we're expecting well over 100 this offseason. We're talking about big leagues, minor leagues, all the way through college, high school, and even some little leaguers too. But we also train a lot of general fitness enthusiasts, people who take their health and wellness a little bit more seriously. Aren't really concerned with getting on a leg press machine, but they want to lift heavy stuff, throw some balls, move some chains, push some prowlers. And it's just a fun atmosphere, but an atmosphere that we kind of call it science-based meathead training. So, I mean, we get after it certainly. Like my foray is definitely to get people stronger, but to do so in a safe and efficient manner. And we're working around a lot of injuries and, you know, just making people healthier in general. So it's been fun for sure.
Well, Tony, when you look at your facility and you hear the way you describe your facility, I imagine some listeners could get in their mind CrossFit and say, oh, okay, this is a CrossFit place. It's a place where they do CrossFit. Is that accurate? Is that inaccurate? And if it's inaccurate, why is it inaccurate? And what are you doing differently?
It is inaccurate. What differentiates us between and then let's get this straight. Like, I have my qualms with CrossFit, but there's a lot of things I like about CrossFit. Like, what I like about CrossFit is that they get people to work hard, which I think is fantastic, and they build an awesome sense of camaraderie, which are two things that we do as well. But what differentiates us from CrossFit and what I don't like about CrossFit, and this certainly doesn't apply to every affiliate because there's certain affiliates in CrossFit that do this, but we make it a point of assessing every client, taking them through screens, taking them through a proper evaluation, and writing individualized programs for every single person that walks through our doors. So whether we're dealing with a minor leaguer who's been in, you know, kind of like in no man's land in the minor leagues for 3 years, and is just trying to increase his performance, whether we're dealing with a 45-year-old CEO who has back pain, whether we're dealing with a 14-year-old kid that's coming out of a back brace dealing with a major case of spondy, every client is getting assessed. Every client is getting an individualized program that they hold in their hands and that they get coached through at our facility. So that is what I feel differentiates us from CrossFit.
And Tony, what is there seems to be two competing schools of thought, and maybe they're not competing, maybe they're complementary, and that's what I want to geek out here a little bit with you on. There's the CrossFit. Often when I was involved in athletics, I was involved in football, and there was certainly these explosive, move quickly, and those seem very athletic focused. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have intentionally slow movement, very super slow type training, slow burn type training. What do you see as the pluses and minuses of each, and who should be interested in each?
I think when it comes to the slow controlled movements, it's just learning appropriate movement patterns. I'm all for getting, I always preach to people that we need to be explosive and we need to have good bar speed. And, I'm really not a fan, because to me, like, if you, especially being more of an athletic based facility, if you train slow, you're going to be slow.
And just, Tony, to clarify, this is because you are an athletic based facility. If I'm a 60-year-old woman whose goal is to reverse my diabetes and to shrink my waist, would you be giving her that same advice?
I would give. We certainly have had those type of people have walked in. Like, I think it's never a bad thing to get people to move well and to be a little bit more athletic. Certainly, I'm not going to take said 60-year-old grandmother and say, hey, let's do our max effort deadlifts and start throwing stuff really fast. And that she's just not going to be prepared for that. But certainly, I would love to teach her a proper squat pattern, a proper hip hinge pattern, maybe work on her push-up pattern. Mm-hmm. Certainly discussing nutrition components. Like, we have a nutritionist at the facility. We have a massage therapist at our facility. We have a manual therapist at our facility that does a lot more intricate manual therapy type stuff. So, we have a team of people that, regardless of anyone's background or sport or interests, we feel we can do that. But I think when it comes to your general person who, wants to look good, they want to look good with their clothes off. Let's be honest. Most people want to look good with their clothes off. They want to have a little fat loss, maybe get a little bit stronger. There's certain things that people want, but their training doesn't reflect that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like what a very good mentor of mine, Dan John, is like always says: your goal is to keep the goal the goal. Does your training reflect your goal? I think the way most people approach their fitness plans, whether it's fat loss or getting a little bit stronger and moving well, their training doesn't necessarily reflect what their goal is, if that makes any sense.
Actually, Tony, could you repeat that saying you just said about what was that?
Yeah, it's one that I stole from strength coach Dan John, and he always says your goal is to keep the goal the goal. So essentially people will have a goal, whatever it may be, but they don't stick to that goal, and their training doesn't reflect that goal.
That is such an important point. That is such an important point, Tony, because I got to tell you, I see so often we become bombarded with let's talk to this here. Training is very specific. It's sports specific. Sure. If you train to become a better baseball player, that's very different than the training you would do. So knowing your goal and being focused on that goal and sticking with that goal, that's incredibly important, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's certain things that we would do with a professional baseball player that we wouldn't do with a football player, or that we wouldn't do with our said 60-year-old grandmother. But I mean, certainly there's some common denominators, like, when it comes to movement quality, core stability, what have you. But a lot of, like you said, there's so much chaos out there as far as the information that we're bombarded with that, I mean, I don't fault people for not knowing what the hell to do. I mean, this goes for the nutrition aspect too. It's like there's a new book coming out every week saying that carbs are bad, carbs are good, fat is bad, fat is good. The same thing in the fitness realm. It's like 1 week CrossFit is great, the next week someone's saying CrossFit's the worst thing for you. 1 week deadlifts are the bees and knees, the next week they're the worst thing for your spine. There's just so much information out there. But what I like to feel, and admittedly I'm a little biased, is that we kind of like weed out that chaos at our facility and try to get people on track and get them to train correctly for their goals, given their needs, given their weaknesses, their imbalances, etc.
Well, and that focus on the goal, it seems obvious, but I do think we very much miss it. And a simple example for that is there is so much, as you said, debate out there about is X good or bad? Is Y good or bad? If anyone makes that statement, even that logical structure, is X good or bad, that logical structure of thinking is leaving out the goal.
Sure.
It's is X good or bad for... There has to be something, like there has to be a for blank. There has to be a for blank. And I think that's why there's so much debate. It's is this good? Well, what are you trying to do? If your goal is to become a wonderful marathon runner, then you are going to do think that which is good for you will be bad for people who are pursuing something different. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, you get people who, and that's kind of like where we come in, because we'll get plenty of people who come in who are interested in fat loss. Let's just use that as the umbrella of the conversation. And I'll sit down with them and discuss their training history, discuss their injury history, and what have you. And I look at like how they'll describe to me how they've been training. They'll be doing, because to me, like when we're talking about fat loss, like doing long duration, steady state, slow cardio is not a very efficient way to go about fat loss. But that's what they've always been told. That's what they've read. And so I'll take the opposite direction and be like, listen, we're going to get you more athletic. We're going to get you strong. Like really at the end of the day, I want to get people stronger. I think strength is the foundation for everything. Like you can't have agility. You can't have power. You can't have endurance without first having a base of strength. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, my main goal, no matter who I'm working with, is to get them stronger. Mm-hmm. Within the context of what their goals are and like their sport. I mean, there's certainly to me, there's a rate of diminishing returns if I'm working with a pitcher. It's like there's really no benefit in me taking their deadlift from 500 to 550 pounds. Like that 50 pounds isn't really going to do anything other than maybe increase the risk of injury. Mm-hmm. Not that I think deadlifting 550 pounds is dangerous, but the work that it would take to get there probably isn't worth it. You know what I mean? But either way, at the end of the day, I want to get people stronger. Like I want to take our 60-year-old grandmother and prove to her that yes, you can do 5 to 10 unassisted push-ups. Yes, you can do squats with a load on your back. Stuff that they thought were impossible, and show them that it is possible.
And I love, Tony, that you describe the strength as being foundational, because it really is in the broadest sense of the word. And what I mean here is that we talk about the confusion of goals, and we talk about how strength is so foundational. And sometimes people say to me, well, Jonathan, are you saying that running is is bad for you. Like, doesn't running improve your health or your cardiovascular risk factors and yada yada? And the question is, well, maybe it does. We can dig into that if we want to.
Sure.
But there are other ways of training that also do that, and a bunch of other stuff, and don't have any negative side effects, and permeate these secondary benefits all throughout your life. Meaning, like, if you run a lot, you probably become a good runner. If you become stronger, you will become, just everything is easier. And in fact, even your perceived cardiovascular skills will get better, because if your leg muscles are stronger, it's easier to walk upstairs.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Being in Boston, like there is a large endurance-based community here, especially with the marathon. And so we do get a fair amount of endurance athletes that come in, whether they're triathletes or they're training for a half marathon, a 5K, or even just the Boston Marathon itself. So a lot of times we have to, and what's nice about our facilities, by the time somebody reaches out to us or contacts us, they usually kind of know what they're getting themselves into. Mm-hmm. They might have read my stuff, they might have read Eric's stuff, so they kind of know what we're about. But even outside of that, sometimes we do have to deprogram people. I'm always telling them, like, listen, getting you stronger is going to help your running efficiency. It's going to help your time. It's all about force development, putting force into the ground to propel yourself forward. Like, no matter what race we're talking about, it is a matter of who finishes first. It's not who can go the longest. So, exactly what you said when it comes to running. Yes, there is some sense of specificity. Like, in order to become a better runner, you need to run. But I would also argue that when it comes to joint integrity, endurance athletes are notorious for, like, beating up their bodies. Like, they're what keep a lot of physical therapists in play. Because they get banged up, they go to physical therapy, they get better, they train, they get hurt again, they go to physical therapy. But the wear and tear that they put on their joints, I'd argue that much of the time, I'll take away a little bit of their running volume, replace that with strength training, and more often than not, they see increases in their time because they're stronger. They're hopefully preventing more injuries from happening in the first place because they are stronger. But, like, at the end of the day, like I said, it's about force development and putting force into the ground to propel us moves forward. So, and they buy into it once they train for a month or two and they see that their mile time went down, they're in. Once I can show them results within a first month or two and they feel better, their times are going down, and they start to get it. So it's always a nice win-win for both parties.
Tony, what do you think about the analogy that crossed my mind as we're talking here in terms of strength being so foundational is, imagine there was a method by which you could just boost your IQ. Like, it wouldn't necessarily make you better at any mental skill necessarily, but it would just give you 20 additional IQ points. Well, then it's like, oh, crap, like that, whatever that is, sign me up right away, because while it may not make me better at learning Spanish directly, it totally will, because you now have 20 additional IQ points and your brain is just better. Is strength training almost like boosting your bodily IQ because it just makes you better at everything?
Yeah, you could argue that. I think it's about efficiency. There's another term that we like to use at the facility, is that getting stronger is corrective. So we get a lot of people who come in beat up, whether it's their shoulder hurts, their back hurts, their knees hurt, what have you. Certainly we're going to address those issues, whether it's tissue quality, movement patterns, biomechanical issues, what have you. But getting stronger is going to take a lot of the burden off of the tendons and ligaments that are getting all beat up. We're making the muscles stronger. It's going to take the pressure off the joints, and it is going to be corrective in nature.
I love that strength is corrective, Tony, because I want your opinion on this, because it seemed almost miraculous in my life. Just a quick personal story is, when you talk about strength being corrective, I tore my ACL and my MCL and both meniscal discs in my knee. At this point, 13 years ago. I then did it. They took a ligament from my hamstring and grafted it to my knee for the ACL because it was a total tear. The PCL or MCL, whatever the other, it was PCL or MCL, was torn in half. They repaired that. Then I tore my meniscus again. They had to just remove it because it was so damaged. Then I tore the ACL graft. So at today, as I'm
Please tell me it was a cool story, like you were fighting a group of ninjas or something.
Well, no, it was football, and then basketball.
Okay, we'll take that.
And the reason I bring this up is I elected not to get the third surgery because I said to myself the first two didn't stick. And
Right.
by getting the surgery, it just made me think, well, I can go back to doing what caused the injury in the first place. The reason I say this, Tony, is I have functioned in a relatively robust capacity for over a decade with no anterior cruciate ligament in my right knee and no left meniscal disc because of strength training. Like,
Sure, absolutely.
what do you think about that?
I think that just kind of goes along with my point. Like you've made your active restraint stronger, and by active restraints I mean your actual musculature, which has taken the burden off of your passive restraints, which is the ligaments, tendons, and stuff that you don't even have there in the first place. But by the sheer nature of making your active restraint stronger, it's basically protected your body and made it more efficient. Which is kind of like what is really the analogy I use with a lot of our endurance athletes as far as the repetition and the wear and tear they put on their joints from all the running that they do. By getting them stronger, if anything, I'm trying to keep them I'm trying to keep them on the pavement more, so they're able to run longer and to do well in their races, rather than go to the physical therapist every 3 or 4 months, whatever the ritual has been. So that's but no, I think it definitely plays into the point I made that the fact that you've done it for a decade with no ramifications. I mean, that just seals the deal right there.
And Tony, well, what are your thoughts? It almost seems like someone could be hearing, and maybe they're hearing correctly. Certainly when we talk about strength training and resistance training, we are talking about developing our muscles. We're talking about building up the body. We're talking about, you said strength is corrective. And it seems like that's almost the opposite, or is that the opposite of when we do this endurance type training, which seems like it's breaking down even the hormonal response. Like one is releasing testosterone and growth hormone, the other is releasing more catabolic hormones. Is strength training a building activity, while as endurance training is a breaking down activity? Or
we're not even factoring in recovery and nutrition. So when we're strength training, we're still breaking down the body. We're ripping muscles, stuff's getting broken down. It's not to the quantity of when people are out there running 3, 4, 5 miles a day. To me, it's all about quality of training, not so much quantity. And I'm along the same lines as you. Is that I understand that running is a part of the equation. Like when we talk about heart health, or we talk about the mind-body connection and the endorphins, and I get it. I understand why people do it. But certainly I always find it comical when some people look at the programs I write. For example, I had a female client who trained with us for 2-3 years. And then she went away. She went off to med school, and I was still writing her programs when she was in Philadelphia. And she wrote me a story saying how there was one day she just got done with like a brutal set of squats. It was like it was a squat session, and some guy walked up to her and was like, "Oh wow, you're really getting after it," and looked at her program. And it was like, "Oh, but where's the cardio?" And meanwhile, as he was asking, it was like she's literally bent over, like huffing and puffing. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, "What do you mean?" Like that anything that elevates your heart rate is cardio. You don't have to be on a treadmill in order to elevate your heart rate. So, and I challenge anyone to go into the gym and do a 20 rep set of squats, of challenging squats, and tell me that your heart rate isn't elevated after the fact. So you don't have to be out on the streets or running on a treadmill in order to get your heart rate up. Like anything that elevates your heart rate can be cardio, but not everything that's cardio is aerobic.
And Tony, that's such a profound, literally that in and of itself. I think if people really understood that point that you just made, which is it don't get so hung up on the means, right? Like focus on the ends. If the ends is to elevate your heart rate, then you can say, okay, that my goal is that. So what is the way to do that while minimizing destructive or unnecessary stress on the body? And certainly a controlled set of 20 squats is is much less wear and tear, it would seem, on one's joints and ligaments than running on pavement and breathing in car exhaust for an hour.
Well, yeah, and you have to factor in too that, I mean, certainly, I mean, there's plenty of people that when I go to a commercial gym and I watch people squat, like my eyes start bleeding. Yeah, I don't like. I mean, believe me, like squats can be just as detrimental as running, But also, I'm under the sentiment and then under the mindset that you need to get fit to run, not run to get fit.
I love that. I love that. You should just get some T-shirts up on your website with these sayings.
I'm throwing out some gems here. These are all quotes I've stolen from other people, so it's not like that. I'm like, so I'm not. But it's certainly like there's plenty of people like running is fairly advanced. Like you look at foot contacts per mile. Like if we're working with an elite athlete and we're doing plyometric training, and I say that in quotations, like we're looking at maybe 30 to 60 foot contacts per session, and then you factor in that what do most people do when they want to get healthy and they want to get fit? They buy a new pair of white sneakers and they put them on, they lace them up, put their iPod on, and then they go out and they run 2 or 3 miles. And we're talking about 1,500 foot contacts per mile. You take somebody who's not well prepared, they don't have good movement quality, they have poor tissue quality, they've been sitting at a desk for 10 to 12 hours a day for the past 2 years in front of their computer. They just are not prepared to take on that much pounding. So that's why I always say people need to get fit to run, not run to get fit.
And Tony, it seems like it's almost analogous. People come back and say, well, I know these people that ran and they got fit. And my response to them, and I'm curious your thought, is that's a bit like cutting your hair with a chainsaw. Like it will cut your hair, but why would you first turn to a chainsaw to cut your hair? Like that's not the right.
Yeah, I mean, and still, like, we can't forget that, like, it is part of the equation, but I mean, I'm biased. Like, I'm a strength coach. I'm a strength guy. So, of course, I'm going to be like, yes, people need to lift weights. I feel like that's the direction most people need to go. And to me, even when I'm working with a lot of female clients, like, I have to deprogram them because they've been told that they need to eat low calories for a long as a periods of time. They should lift light weights for high reps. And I take the opposite approach. I'm like, listen, we're going to get you strong. We're going to increase your calories a little bit. We're going to deprogram you and good things are going to happen. Like I feel like for what most people are looking to do with their bodies, I think strength training is going to trump just about everything else, whether we're talking about yoga, Pilates, running, and I've done all of them. So this is stuff that I've done myself. Like I've gone to yoga class and I've written about it. Like I've gone to a yoga class, I've gone to a Pilates class. I've stated what I liked about them. I've stated what I disliked about them. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, I still feel like strength training and lifting appreciable weight, like getting after it, is going to trump anything that anyone can do, whether as far as anything else. I mean, and I'm biased. I know that's a very I don't know, closed-minded way of thinking, but I truly do believe that.
Tony, and I agree with you, and I think to your credit and hopefully to my credit as well, you're also not saying everything else is stupid, only strength train. What I hear you saying is much more like I talk about non-starchy vegetables should be the foundational element. Like if there's just like one thing I had to say, it's like increase non-starchy vegetable intake from a nutrition perspective. What I hear you saying, and that doesn't mean I don't like protein. Like I love protein, but I'm just like non-starchy vegetables. That is the base. And what I hear you saying and what I would agree with is strength training is the non-starchy vegetables of fitness.
I would. That's a good analogy. I like that. Like I think that like it's the base. Like I think as long as they get, like if I'm working with a female client, like you get your 3 strength training sessions in a week. I don't care what you do after that. Like I go to Pilates, go to yoga, like go run your 3 miles, like do it. But you're coming to me to get you a result. I know what's going to get you the result. You need to lift some weights, and because that's going to increase lean body mass. It's going to take some fat away. It's going to increase bone strength. Not to mention all the hormonal stuff that's going on. Like that's going to get you where you want to go. And then anything after that, you're at your own discretion. You can do what you want. But you give me what you're coming to me for my expertise and my insight. This is what you need to do. You're going to do it. And then after that, you if you want to go to yoga class at the end of the week because you like, sitting in a quiet room listening to music and relaxing, I get it. Like I did it. I understand it. But I mean, that's certainly not. I mean, sitting in a room sweating doesn't mean you're going to be shedding 7 pounds of fat in a week. So getting in the gym and getting after it is what's going to lead to that. So, but I totally agree with you. It's the base, and and it's not the poo-poo on anything else. I'm just very biased towards people lifting heavy stuff.
I love it, Tony. Well, thank you so much. Certainly, you mentioned, your clients come to you for your experience and expertise, and it's very clear that you have a lot of both of those. And just to close, I want to recap on the three of the wonderful things you said today, which is, remember, folks, Tony is sharing some insights with us. And the first is the goal is to keep your goal. The second is that strength is corrective. And the third is get fit to run. Don't run to get fit. And Tony, that's just like 1, 2, 3 strikes, we're out, because I don't think we can get any better than that.
Yeah, that's a pretty good ending point, I think.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, if you want to learn more about Tony, there's a bunch of free content on his website. And he's a smiley guy. You can tell that he's a happy, friendly person in his writing. It always makes me smile. So check him out.
Coach, I'm a cool dude.
He's a cool guy. His website is Tony Gentlecore. So he's got a gentle core. Oh, he's Gentlecore. Well, Tony, thank you so much for joining us. And folks, check him out at TonyGentlecore.com. And remember, this week and every week after, eat smarter, exercise smarter, and live better. Talk with you soon.
Wait, don't stop listening yet. If you like the podcast and if there's other ways we can help you, please join us in the Smarter Science of Slim support group, which is freely available at the Smarter Science of Slim website, smarterscienceofslim.com. There you'll find all kinds of free recipes and success stories and just all kinds of fun stuff, like how to help your kids go sane and just great community content.
And just one last thing before you go, if you wouldn't mind heading over to iTunes and up onto Amazon.com and leaving us a review, and then going over to Facebook and liking us, we would hugely appreciate it.